Listed ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff operations officer, assisted the national security team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the vice commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Well, there might be a risk. I have been in touch with all of them, as I said, especially with Qatar and Oman foreign ministers. I explained for them. What happened in Oman was not our choice. We have already told our, army, armed forces to be careful about the targets that they choose. As a matter of fact, our, military units are now, in fact, independent and somehow isolated, and they are acting based on instructions, general instructions given to them in advance.
Good afternoon, America. This is More War Monday on the Rob Maness Show, and we're live on Worldview 2. Well, the Iranian Mosaic defense, that's what's going on here. That system, right now, the Middle East is ablaze. The U.S. and Israeli strikes continue to hammer Iran. Missiles are flying. Oil routes in the Strait of Hormuz are under direct threat by the Iranians. The global energy prices are spiking and then going down and spiking again, so they're erratic. China's watching closely as their supply lines get squeezed, but also their defense assets get crushed, like their air defense system that didn't work. And Iran's not folding, and that's not expected to fold anytime soon in this operation, I don't think. They're fighting back, and they're trying to fight back as hard as they can, although they're very limited. You just saw that clip. Why is that guy saying what he's saying is the question of this show. Because Iran's game plan isn't about a knockout punch. That's why. It's about survival and trying to wear the United States down. That's their mosaic defense, is the way it's characterized. A decentralized nightmare built over many decades by the IRGC. The IRGC is the force that suppresses the people and keeps the mullahs in power, folks. No single command center exists to take out. There are provincial units, as he mentioned, the Basij militias, missile batteries, drone swarms, all semi-autonomous and ready to keep launching even if Tehran goes completely dark again like it was on the first night. It's attrition warfare. Bleed the enemy economically, exhaust defenses, turn every province into a little resilient tile that keeps the fight going. We'll look at how this mosaic actually works. And then from the Iranian perspective, their own view of operating in this scattered and headless mode. And finally, the big question I want to try to get answered for you, our audience today, is can it be defeated? I think it can, but we've got an expert because I don't think we want this as our new reality that we're facing. And joining me to break it all down is former intelligence officer Michael Prejeant. And he's a deep expert on the IRGC operation, the Iranian proxies, and these asymmetric networks. Michael, it's great to have you back with us. Let's get into it. What does this decentralized mosaic really mean for American strategy on this war?
Well, for Americans to understand this, imagine the Pentagon was taken out, our intelligence agencies were taken out, and our division headquarters across our combat divisions were taken out. And you have these disparate battalions operating independently, like you said, with a general mission statement of if you're in charge of drones, here are your targets. If you launch ballistic missiles, here are your targets. If you're part of the IRGC or the Basij, it's about regime survival. So you go after charismatic males, the leaders in the opposition, and you disappear them. You exit them. So that's what the plan, that's what we're seeing in real time, right? Yeah. I would just say that we've added on top of that, we've basically taken out the supreme leader, degraded their military command and control, that we affected their leadership all across the IRGC, the Quds Force, and the Basij. to the point where these decisions, and if you listen to the president speaking, the president of Iran is basically saying, hey, we're trying to tell our military to stop doing that. And, we both know that they're going to do it anyway because they're not listening to politicians at this point. They're not
Mm-hmm.
listening to clerics. They're not listening to the Council of Experts or the Guardian Council. They have their orders. There's a reason the IRGC wants Khamenei's son is because he's an IRGC guy. He's
Yeah.
deferred to them. He's worked with them. And the best leader they can have is one that, reportedly has lost a leg and is in a coma that they don't really have to ask questions of. They can operate independently. I think that's where we're at right now.
Yeah. So what does it look like on the ground? I don't think a lot of folks understand just how big geographically Iran, the country, is, or how complex their system of command and control and communications, but especially the units of the IRGC and how they're located, what their architecture is, how do they communicate? Because there's got to be some type of communication, and then how do they make decisions on whether to strike a target or not, or just go dark to protect themselves? Do we have any idea how all that works?
We know what it looked like before the operation, right? So we've degraded
Yeah.
their communications capabilities, their command and control structures, their radars. So you basically have spotters now. If let's talk about the Strait of Hormuz for a second. Hey, I think that is a non-Russian or non-Chinese tanker. Let's attack it. And then it turns out they hit a Russian tanker, right? In the last
Hmm.
24 hours. So it's at that point where they're not getting orders, they're not getting the intel, they're not able to rely on technology that they may have had before Epic Fury started. So they're kind of, messing up, right? Who launches a ballistic missile at Turkey? You don't want to do
Hmm.
that because Turkey is an ally in this case. Who launches at Oman? You don't want to do that because Oman has always been your divorce attorney, trying to get you the best settlement in these negotiations. We can talk about Qatar in a second. But a lot of these groups, you got to think about the demoralization aspect on these IRGC battalion commanders, company commanders, maybe even brigade commanders at this point, where they see they can't shoot down American aircraft, they can't shoot down Israeli aircraft. That is demoralizing to be able to
Hmm.
see U.S. aircraft, Israeli aircraft fly at daytime, low level. And now the Israelis and we, the United States as well, are using drones to target checkpoints inside of Tehran, besieged checkpoints and RGC checkpoints. So there's a demoralizing effect here on the IRG soldier. We would be demoralized if we had enemy fighters flying over our skies and targeting elements of the 82nd Airborne Division that were sitting at
Hmm.
checkpoints or trying to conduct operations or launch drones. So that's the capability I look at. I look at, strengths, weaknesses, schisms, opportunities. And we're seeing schisms. We're seeing a lot of these people are breaking ranks.
Hmm.
The besieged members posting videos saying there's nobody at our checkpoint, everybody's gone home, I'm going to do the same thing. We've seen that from the Artesh, the regular army. We have not seen that from the Quds Force yet. We need to see that. We need to see that from the IRGC. And when we see that, then we'll start being able to really gauge how effective this mosaic defense really is. But yes, can they oppress their population? Yes. They've already told the population to come out of the house, we're going to shoot you. They're
Hmm.
able to launch drones. A single Shahed 136 drone is about a 10 to 20 minute setup. A swarm setup, multiple drones using a TEL, a launcher for these drones. They have 5 drones in the back of one of these launchers, a truck.
Hmm.
Goes out to a point, it makes it vulnerable. The setup makes them a target. We're over the skies, the Israelis over the skies looking for these signatures. So that's something that we're looking at, but that's something they can still do, right?
Hmm.
So they're decentralized. They're able to conduct drone attacks, rocket and missile attacks, but we've seen a steep decline in their ability to do that over the last 11 days. But what do they do when their backs are against the wall? Colonel, what do they do? Do they
Hmm.
use their hypersonic missiles? Do they use other things that we haven't seen in the battlefield? Do they even have those things? Did Russia actually give them
Yeah.
to them? So we're looking at things. As a former intelligence officer, I've been taught to think like the enemy. So what would I do in
Hmm.
this case? I'd keep my head down. I'd go to civilian clothes and I'd fire from civilian areas.
Yeah. The so let's take the units on the Straits of Hormuz mission. in the Persian
Right.
Gulf mission. They're looks like they're floating out some surface remotely operated vehicles or autonomous vehicles with explosives on them, boats that used to be boats but are now uh, uh, unmanned vehicles laden with explosives. And they've hit a couple of ships in the North Persian Gulf near the Iraqi port and those kind of things. And they've hit a couple of ships in the South near the Straits. And they don't know how they don't have good targeting information. So how would they be getting their targeting information now if they're disconnected? Is it just like visual lookouts, those kind of things? Is why it's so bad?
Yeah, so it's basically, somebody identifying a ship with binoculars and saying, I think that's a bad ship. But let me talk about those ships that were hit near Iraq. Those are their ghost ships. They're hitting those to demonstrate a capability. Those
Yeah.
are those are tankers that they could have hit. That's coordinated. They could have been
Mm-hmm.
self-sabotage. That is something just to demonstrate ability. They knew those are ours. Let's hit those so that we can send a message. When it comes
Mm-hmm.
to the other things, those are mistakes. Now, these these surface, guided bombs, they don't discriminate. They could hit a
Right.
Russian tank. They can hit a Russian tanker, a Chinese tanker or a Russian tanker. The
Mm-hmm.
mines as well. So we've negated their ability to fly. You've seen the cool, we're Iranian special ops. So let's fast rope out of a rotary wing aircraft onto the deck of a tanker and take it over.
Mm-hmm.
They can't do that.
Yeah.
They can't use their gunboats anymore. So the mines, that's the one thing. But again, Russia and China don't want those mines in the Strait of Hormuz because they don't discriminate.
Yeah.
So there are things we can do. But one thing, Colonel, we should know, your audience should know, we've given this capability to Qatar, to Bahrain, to the UAE, these anti-mining capabilities. We've provided them with US tech, US
Mm-hmm.
naval assets. We've sold them to them. We've trained them on how to do this. So we need to see our allies doing more in the Strait of Hormuz. Again, the Shahed drone cannot sink a tanker. An anti-ship
Yeah.
missile can. And we've seen Shahed drones so far, and I think those two tankers that were you know in the Basra port area are
Mm-hmm.
theirs.
Yeah.
That's how they
Yeah, I think
deploy.
so. Yeah, you brought up the hypersonic anti-ship missiles. We haven't seen
Right.
any of that. I'm beginning to believe that the assessment that said they had them was off base.
Right. You want to go for the most dangerous course of action. Do they have them? What can we do to negate this? And then you
Yeah.
look for indicators of abuse. But then you can use the Putin argument that Putin will only escalate when he feels his back's against the wall. Escalate to de-escalate, meaning
Mm-hmm.
tactical nuclear weapon in Ukraine. We talked about that over the last, 3 years.
Right.
With Iran, it's the hypersonic missiles. What will they do? Do they even have them?
Yeah.
Did we hit the first wave? Did we take those out? Was that one of the priorities of the Israeli defense forces and air force to take those out? So that right now Iran's winning on X, winning on Twitter with AI, but it's
Mm-hmm.
laughable, right? But on the ground, it's got to be demoralizing. If you and I were IRGC commanders on the ground, we'd be in civilian clothes. We'd be shooting out of mosques, schools, hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
So at least we have collateral damage to win the media war that our media is so inclined to believe. Anytime they hear something from a source that should be discredited, any regime source that
Mm-hmm.
says this happened should be questioned instead of published on the front page of our newspapers and be the headline for our media. We've given our adversaries such a platform here in the United States.
Yeah, yeah, but you can identify them. I did a post last night on X just before I turned in, just to let it sit overnight, and it simply said, just a reminder: the Iranians commit a war crime every day, at least one, in this war. And by the time I got out of the rack this morning, we were inundated with all of a sudden Western and South Asian and Asian bots coming in saying that no, you kill school children with tomahawks, those kind of things, which is a lie. I've seen a lot of good
Yeah,
analysis on that
right.
school, the girls' school thing, and it looks like a KH-55 to me. Not that I know anything about weaponry, or especially Russian one, but I do know a little bit about it. Well, we got to take a break, Michael. When we come back, I want to continue this discussion, but get into the whole: how does it work? Why are they being so hyperbolic now? Because the rhetoric's turned up from the Iranian leadership over the last 24 hours. And this drone concept that the U.S. and the Israelis are now using is very, very interesting. And the IRGC commanders have got to be really worried about it. We'll be right back with Michael Pregent.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
So the Iranians rely on what's called a mosaic defense strategy. It's this kind of decentralized approach to warfare. The U.S. and the Israelis have gone after a lot of Iran's conventional military capabilities, but right now, the effort would be at attempting to go after the command and control node. So look, it's an extremely complex military operation from the American side. It's not only the hardware that's needed, but there's all sorts of joint command decisions, operational tempo, and other aspects to consider as well.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and we're talking about the Iranians' supposed vaunted Mosaic defense system with intelligence officer Michael Pregent. And Michael, just before the break, I mentioned that the hyperbole and propaganda has really ratcheted up on the Iranian side the last 24 to 36 hours. Is that any kind of indicator? Not that they have strength, but that maybe they've gotten some of their communications with their commanders back, and they're getting confident in that they can actually do some things now instead of just throwing rounds willy-nilly.
What's interesting about that, the more bravado they show on social media and, in other places, actually puts our military more at risk because it amps up our attacks. It amps up our airstrikes. So it's kind of a defeating. It's cheerleading failure in a way, but not knowing that that's what they're doing. The only people that are in charge of anything on the ground right now are those IRGC commanders at the battalion level. They're trying to, they can't mass, right? They can't, move their military towards, through vehicles. They don't have tanks. They don't have things like that. There's no enemy to move that stuff towards. So they're focused on the population. They can't shoot down any aircraft. They can't shoot down. The drones that we're using are actually reverse technology that we took from the Shahed 136 drone and made it more capable, made it quieter. And, the Israelis are launching those from somewhere. And I love that because we don't know whether they've already established a foothold in northern Iran or they're launching out of northern Iraq. We don't know, but if you're an IRGC guy, that's exactly what you think. That's where you think it's coming from. Because anytime we can tend to think we have a capability that we have or we don't have, it creates doubt. It creates a fog of war in their minds, and you're seeing that. It creates panic. And when they don't have a higher headquarters to bring in reinforcements or a quick reaction force, they feel isolated. They're on their own. So that's the important part of this. These are the opportunities, right? These are the schisms that we look at to exploit. And I think there's no better military to do that than the Israeli Defense Forces and the IAF right now.
Yeah,
we're doing as well. We just hit targets. They're willing to get down on the ground. They're willing to do more than we are.
Yeah, and when I first, I think it was yesterday morning, I saw the first video coming out from the population showing the drones over intersections around Tehran, and there's just hundreds of these things flying around. Yeah, they're basically orbiting at intersections
and not being able to be shot down. That is demoralizing. If you're a besieged guy with a weapon, you're like, we're a target. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, let's take the typical IRGC battalion in a city and then one maybe in a more rural area. So in a city, I've already seen a photograph, unconfirmed, of IRGC vehicles parked outside of a kindergarten in downtown Iran. So these guys are all flushed out of their normal headquarters and in their operating facilities because they've been destroyed. I'm making a big assumption there, but I'm pretty sure that's probably accurate. Uh, how are they? How are they assembling people in arms and ammunition, food? I mean, you gotta clothe, feed these people to keep them going and give them ammunition and those kind of things. How are they doing that? And then selecting what kind of operation they're going to do to contribute to the mission, assuming the mission is purely suppressing the people at this point.
Yeah, at this point, if you're an IRGC battalion inside of a population center, you're there to show presence, right? To show that you're still there. But we've heard through reporting and through chatter that they're running out of weapon systems. They're running out of ammunition. They're running out of water and food. And the population is staying indoors. So they're the only exposed target besides regime. You saw this BS propaganda video of a regime guy on a stage in Tehran with a huge crowd cheering, saying, "Look how brave we are. The Americans have no chance. Look at our resolve." It's because they know we don't target crowds like that. The Israelis don't target crowds. The Israelis didn't drop a bomb in the stadium in Lebanon when everybody was mourning the assassination, the legitimate targeting of Nasrallah. So they actually know it kind of defeats their argument that we attack civilian targets because that would be
Yeah.
lucrative to them. But my point is, the only people out there are the IRGC, and it makes them sitting ducks. They can't shoot back at us. If they launch a drone from one of those schools and hospitals or kindergartens, they want us to hit it so that they can use the Hamas narrative that the Iranians taught these terrorist groups, that Lebanese Hezbollah taught every group, that make sure there are civilian casualties with every operation. Fire from schools, keep the children there. Most people don't know that the children are forced to stay there so that they will be collateral damage if there is a counterfire battery attack or we hit a place. The point of origin, we saw that we have radars and automatic systems. Point of origin, you hit it. With a Q-36, Q-37 radar in a tactical environment, but in these strategic environments like this, where you have standoff and where you're firing from platforms and firing from other countries, you have more advanced radars that can just put lead on target within seconds of a point of origin fire, point of origin, point of impact, right? So we know where it is, and they're hoping that we'll hit it. And these guys are willing to die, right? We know that about the IRGC, and we know that about these terrorist organizations. They're willing to die because they believe martyrdom, and within seconds they'll be in paradise and everything like that. But they want the casualties, so that's what they're doing. The population, they're trying to show that they're still there, and it's important that those drone strikes hit them where we see them. We need the video of an IRGC uniform presence in a place, and then the drone going in. And if there's collateral damage, it's because they were, violating international law by putting a weapon system in a school, a hospital, or a mosque. And you just do what the Israelis do. Just blow off. Who cares what public opinion thinks? Do the right thing. Take out these terrorists.
Yeah, that the girls' school that I referenced earlier, that target that was in the south part of the country, is actually inside of a IRGC compound,
Right.
which we did target. But when you look at the analysis of the weapon on that, I'm convinced that it's not an American weapon because a Tomahawk would completely flatten that place with one warhead on it.
There's great analysis. One of my buddies I went to Israel with is actually leading that. Tredos is doing that, and he basically showed that compound and said the ones that we hit with the cruise missile, the building's flattened, the building's gone.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
Cool. Half of it is still standing. So I'm not saying, I don't want to say we didn't do it, but what I want to say is it's likely that we didn't, based on the evidence.
Yeah,
You
that's
have to
exactly
look,
right.
you have to look at the explosion. You got to be a skeptic. You got to ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? And if your default position is you hate America, hate Trump, hate this operation, then that's confirmation bias for you when you see something like that. And if you're on the other side, you're pro-Trump, pro-mission, it's confirmation bias. You say, yeah, that's right. It's not us. So, but we have to ask ourselves, what if we were wrong? Let's say we did. We didn't intentionally hit it because it was a kid's school. We thought it was an IRGC target, right? Because
Right.
that's what it was.
Exactly.
But in this case, you just got to look at the different targeting aspects. It's when a TLAM, a tomahawk hits something, it flattens it. It has a punch hole
Yeah.
through it. And some of this New York Times stuff said, "Oh, look at the hole that just went in." And they have these holes on top of these buildings, but then the other video showed the building completely gone. So when I don't understand how you can show a building with a precision hole in it. They said that look at the crescent entry point on these buildings, which tomahawk. But if you actually look at the buildings that were hit on this IRGC compound, they're gone, except
Yeah.
for the school. Half of it is gone. And
Yeah.
we have no confirmation of the bodies, we have no confirmation of this and that. But we have to ask ourselves, what if we are wrong? And what if your POV is simply based on confirmation bias? And that's what we have. When the New York Times becomes Al Jazeera, when NBC News becomes Al Jazeera, they don't need Al Jazeera anymore to be that platform that supports these groups.
And so
I've been
far, the
taught
New York Times is Al Jazeera, as along with CNN.
absolutely. I've been taught to think like the enemy for 30 years, right? And since
Yeah.
since Gaza, I would think that, hey, you could almost conduct a 9/11 style attack in this country, and half the media would support you and say we deserved it. And half of our college kids would feel the same thing because of all these idiots that came out and became lemmings for Qatari funded protests in Europe, Qatari funded protests in the United States, and somehow became, radicalized in this colonial BS victim mentality where anything that we support must be bad, therefore, I'm against it. It's a permissive environment for jihadists, for terrorists. You see those two ISIS guys thought they were justified throwing those, you know, you know, badly made IEDs at a crowd because the culture here is, yeah, you can do this because half America supports you guys or thinks we deserve it. So I'm not surprised by that, but I'm concerned about that. You and I have had the luxury of planning for war at a base for a war over there or a targeting packet over there.
Yeah.
10-man cells are here in the United States now. What can they do? So we need to be vigilant about that. But you and I both know the local law enforcement is not ready for that. The IC is not ready for that. And we are vulnerable. We're probably going to end up being, reactive when something happens.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right, man. And people like you and I, we've been warning about this for years because it's so obvious. But our systems, at least what we can see publicly, our systems are not preparing and have not prepared for that. And I think the response system-wise to the two jihadis in New York City was moderately okay, just okay though. It wasn't exceptional. We've got to really get better at this to where we're no longer hanging the shingle out on they're crazy people, or what was it CNN initially said? Two young men went from Pennsylvania on a Sunday afternoon to New York City, and their whole lives changed.
Morning walk, yeah.
Talk about Iranian propaganda. That's exactly what we need to fight against it. And you're right. The young people in this country have bought into some lies, hook, line, and sinker, that they just don't really understand it, and they're being reactive. And we've got to figure out a way to educate them on what the reality is. And there are a lot of people on our side of on my side of the political spectrum. I don't know your politics, but on the right side of the political spectrum, that are young people that have bought into it too. And all you got to do is put a tweet out like I did last night about the reminder that the Iranians do a war crime every day. And you can see half of them are probably people in the United States that are under 35, and the other half are Asian bots, which are the Iranians themselves. But we got to take another break, Michael. When we come back, we'll hear from the perspective from the Iranians themselves on Mosaic a little bit and continue this discussion, because by the end of the show, my goal is to help you, the American people, be educated and be able to share this video and learn these lessons from Michael, who is a professional intelligence officer, who's been studying this problem set for years and years and years. We'll be right back.
What if millions around the world could access Bible teaching and worldview training for free right now without hitting a paywall? That's exactly what happens every day at worldviewtube.com because of the Worldview Weekend Foundation. We don't lock our live stream behind PayPal. We don't restrict our content to members only. Instead, the Worldview Weekend Foundation helps cover the cost of delivering free educational and ministry programming to people across the nation and around the world. And it's not just programming. My Sunday night church service, where I taught verse by verse through Revelation for 18 months, and now I am teaching through the book of Daniel, is made possible through the support of our church, Worldview Weekend Foundation. If you believe this kind of truth-centered biblical teaching must continue, donate today. Go now to worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address and phone number there if you'd rather give by phone or mail. That's worldviewfoundation.com. Thank you.
The West thinks they can break Iran like a conventional army. They're dead wrong. Why? Because Iran doesn't fight like a traditional army, Iran fights like an anti-imperialist insurgency. For decades, the IRGC has been built like the very resistance movement from which it arose that overthrew the Shah. No fully centralized command, no single brain to target, instead, the decentralized mosaic defense. The idea is straightforward. It disperses command structures, weapon systems, and operational units across vast geographic and organizational nodes. Imagine a glass mosaic. Smash one corner, but the entire picture stays complete. That's Iran's strategy. 31 independent units in each province, each with their own weapons, authority, and fighting spirit. No need to call Tehran for permission, no waiting for orders from above. When the imperialists strike, 31 mini armies rise up as one. Decapitating the leaders doesn't work. It is a system designed to have no off switch. And these aren't typical generals. They're the veterans who started the anti-Shah Islamic Revolution and later crushed the US-backed Takfiri plan aimed at destabilizing the new Middle East in Iraq and Syria, albeit the fall of Damascus after 14 years of resistance. They supported the regional resistance in growing its capabilities to master asymmetrical warfare through movements like Hezbollah and the Popular Mobilization Forces, and Yemen throughout its war of defense against the US and Saudi, and its intervention against the Gaza genocide. Iran has already delivered a far wider and more crushing response in the first 2 days of the war than it did in the entirety of the June 2025 12-day war, targeting the Zionist entity and US bases and interests across the region. When there is no single person to call to negotiate a ceasefire, the imperialist game changes entirely. Iran, with its vast missile stockpiles and natural defense barriers like mountains, deserts, and seas, and 90 million person popular cradle of resistance, is prepared to wage a long war. This is why Ali Larijani, the leader of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, announced, "Bombings in our capital have no impact on our ability to conduct war. Decentralized mosaic defense enables us to decide when and how war will end." Hence, rationally, Iran's goal may not be a ceasefire that would result in another war of aggression a few months later. Rather, it would be to deter the threat entirely by completely expelling the US empire from West Asia.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and we're live on Worldview Tube, and we're talking about the mosaic defense system and concept that the Iranians use, because a lot of people, especially people on the Allied side, that really don't understand warfare or really don't understand the country, its military organization, and why the current war needs to be ended. And America and the Israelis are determined to do that now, along with our Gulf Arab allies that have been attacked in this combined operation. So it's very important for you to understand that propaganda piece is from an Iranian perspective. I know it sounds slick in English, American type English and those kind of things, but that's a piece of Iranian propaganda. But I want you to understand what they think about their mosaic defense, and what they want you to think about it, that it's not defeatable, that it's working just fine. We've already talked about with our guest today, intelligence officer Michael Pregent, about why it's not working well for them because of the way the war is being conducted this time. And Michael, I wanted to show that so people have it on the record of what the Iranians think about their system as we continue our discussion. And as you mentioned, we now have drones orbiting intersections in cities that the IRGC might be wanting to use to control the population and those kind of things. And And the IDF, I think, they haven't said it publicly much, but in this combined op, I think up to this point, it's been the Israeli forces that have targeted the IRGC and the Quds forces inside the country more than the Americans have. We've been doing more of the industrial scale dismantling of their ballistic missile manufacturing, their launch systems, their ships, and those kind of things. But eventually, we will run out of having to hit those targets and be able to concentrate with this too. So we were talking about a battalion commander for the IRGC in a populated area like Tehran, but we know there are these battalions, especially on the western side of the country. If I'm correct about that, please confirm it. That along the western side of the country is where a lot of these battalions are out in the rural areas. They have drone launch capability, may have some short-range missile and rocket capability, artillery, and those kind of things. Some of them do. How would they be operating in this environment if we've destroyed their headquarters facilities and they're now flushed out like the city guys are?
Well, they'd be operating at the squad and team level, right? If you're a battalion commander, you have these forces that are able to launch drones. Let's say you have a drone force, and then you also have a quick reaction force that's able to, to help, put down a uprising or something like that out there. Those are signatures, right? Anytime a vehicle, military vehicle is moving, it's likely to be hit. Anytime they're setting up drone operations, they're likely to be hit. So I would spread them out. Spread them out, put them in that mountainous terrain that we've seen that's indicative of Western Iran and Northern Iran, and set up ADA ambushes. But I think even in that case, it's hard because once we're able to see it with intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assets, we can hit with a standoff, missile that hits it from an aircraft. We can hit it with a drone. We can hit it with artillery. HIMARS in another country can hit that. So you're getting hit. As soon as your signature goes up, as soon as you use a radar, that radar is being hit. So the biggest defections that have happened so far in these disparate IRGC units is that anybody manning a radar doesn't want to do it. Anybody setting up a drone swarm doesn't want to do it because they're getting hit before they actually even launch, especially with ballistic missiles. This was the same thing that was going on in Afghanistan prior to the Arab Spring. A lot of foreign fighters were moving into Afghanistan, and Osama bin Laden couldn't keep them there because they were getting hit by a drone before they even saw a U.S. soldier that they were there to kill. And so a lot of them, the Arab Spring happened, just left Afghanistan and went to Syria. And in the sensitive site exploitation of the Abbottabad, strike on Osama bin Laden, I worked at when I was in the intel community. A lot of the communications were, how do we keep these guys engaged? How do we get them back to Afghanistan? Why are they all? And it's because, at the end of the day, a soldier wants to be able to smoke shisha and, have a drink and go to a bar. They could do that in Syria. But out here in this area, these IRGC guys, their families are probably in other population centers saying, come home, are you okay? Have you defected? What's going on here? Because a lot of these IRGC members have families that are against this regime. And we have to remember, IRGC is the most lucrative military job you can get in the country. It pays the best, you get the best training, you're respected by the population, you're above it all. It's not the IRGC going out there and shooting people. It's the besieged, right? The ununiformed thugs that ride around on motorcycles and will kill women, torture women for taking a hijab off. These IRGC soldiers that were part of this proud organization, this elite organization, have no leadership now, have no funding, have no logistical support, and they're being killed before they even see an American or an Israeli. So that has a demoralizing effect. Again, that's what I'm focused on. What can demoralize the IRGC? And I think your audience should know that everything that we've learned in fighting terrorists, we've learned from Israel. And everything these groups have learned, Al Qaeda, ISIS, Lebanese Hezbollah, these groups have learned from fighting Israel. So the core of knowledge is in both places. Israeli, operations against terrorist groups going back to its inception, and we learn from that. So the Israelis are fully aware of this mosaic. They know how to hit it. And this drone thing, you and I both know this is something that we never employed in Iraq, never
Yeah.
employed in Afghanistan to go after these cells. And the Israelis they own the sky when it comes to drones and the loitering aspect. This isn't a drone that received an intel and says, go hit this building. This
Right.
is a drone that is watching. And when it sees a
Hmm.
target, hit it. And that is something that we haven't seen employed by U.S. forces in Iraq or Afghanistan. We saw ISIS do it,
Hmm.
but this is a game changer. So this drone could pretty much disrupt that propaganda we heard from the regime about
Yeah.
how this mosaic operates. Uh, they they don't have counter drone capabilities like we do.
Hmm.
They're not used to this. The IRGC has not really been tested if you think about it. They
Yeah.
will fight the last Arab, but they haven't really been tested. The actual
Hmm.
IRGC. They
Yeah.
were.
You
I'm
mentioned
sorry.
the
Go ahead.
besiege. How are the besieged controlled? And I think the Israelis have fantastic intelligence on those groups too, because they've been publicly saying they're targeting them and killing them. How are they
Right.
linked into the overall architecture of the command and control that the IRGC has most of?
Yeah, they're a directorate of the IRGC. They're just
Okay.
that plainclothes civilian thug that goes out and kills people. And what the IDF has done, the Mossad actually has basically got all their records, so they know who the agents are now. They've hacked into their systems. They know who their agents are, who their sources are, who their families are, and they're starting to put that pressure campaign. I don't know if you saw the report, but they basically had a text message come up on all of the phones from besieged members saying, "It's time to defect. We know who you are. We know where you are." You
Hmm.
know, that it reminds them of the Beeper campaign, where
Yeah.
Israel took out 150 key leaders of Hezbollah. And what people should know is imagine the 82nd Airborne Division is lined up in parade formation, right? One of our
Hmm.
prestigious units, and you see everyone standing with the flags and going through the ranks that are in leadership positions take a knee because they've just received an injury to the groin area or die.
Right.
And just seeing that's what Israel was able to do to Hezbollah
Hmm.
inside of Lebanon.
Yeah.
Imagine you're a besieged guy and you get oh, you need to defect now. We know who you are. And they call you by your name
Yeah.
and they tell you where your family is. So that's
Hmm.
what Israel's doing. And you know what? The besieged guy believes it because he's seen it happen to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to the
Hmm.
Houthis. And there's no greater target. I mean, you just killed the supreme leader.
Yeah.
These, these are believable threats. And
Yeah. They are.
I would distance myself from anything that was connected to anything if I was a besieged member of the IRGC. So that goes to that communications thing. They're not
Hmm.
talking, rolling meetings. They have pre-planned stuff. They get a mission statement.
Yeah.
Kill anything in your sector, and that's their mission statement. So there's no
Hmm.
reason for. And all the local comms are probably handheld radio
Yeah.
or visual signs or rolling meetings.
Outside of the country, I want to bring this in. The scaremongers that are out there always try to go, look at all these proxies the Iranians control. We shouldn't try to attack them and take their government down because they're going to just hit us with their proxies. My view on that is now their logistics, their communications, their intelligence, and the ability to get financing and other resources has been cut by this operation. Am I correct in that, or is there somehow that the Iranian government is still controlling these proxies?
Well, the SEPA Bank, right? SEPA Bank is an IRGC bank. There's a run on
Mm,
that bank. Shut down. It got hit. That funded a lot of these proxy militias. It was delisted under the Obama administration, then redesignated under the Trump administration for being, a primary
mm,
pass for IRGC funds. And again, have to remember the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps owns 30% to 40% of every economic sector inside of Iran. So
uh,
everything is hurting this regime. As far as funding the militias in Iraq, they're the low-hanging fruit at this point. What happened to Hezbollah? Israel just killed their leader in the last 12 hours, in the
yeah,
last 6 hours. I got that alert this morning. Their new leader. So anybody taking on these
right,
new positions is automatically a target. The Houthis haven't done a lot. Have you noticed? They haven't
That's
done
because
anything.
we sunk the intelligence boat that was giving them
Yeah,
targeting information. Finally.
exactly. After
Well, I
what,
got
sitting
I
there
got to
the
take
whole
I got to
time?
take our last break. When we come back, I want to
Sure.
continue this discussion because now we're into how do we beat these people? Because we are beating them, but we need to crush them in overwhelming defeat, so they are forced to unconditionally surrender. We'll be right back with Intelligence Officer Michael Prejean.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
Iran's Mosaic defense allows individual commanders to fight autonomously even after leadership is wiped out. This million-man force, including the Revolutionary Guard, remains a threat. However, U.S. strikes have already reduced Iranian missile launches by 90%, proving that even a decentralized defense struggles against sustained, high-tech American pressure.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and we're talking about the Mosaic defense and how it works, how it's probably unfounded for people both inside the country and outside the country to have too much confidence in this because of the new tactics, techniques, procedures, and strategy and technological capabilities that the Israeli and American Air Forces now have with Intelligence Officer Michael Prejean. Michael, that's my big question. My big question is, how do we defeat this system? It sounds like we have talked about the pieces and parts about the process that's occurring in order to get that done. And as an air power guy all of my life and a sea power guy, I'm glad to see an all-out air and naval campaign against this country that's been at war with us since I was 17 years old in an Air Force uniform as an E1. This is an operation to end that war, but to end it, we have to defeat this Mosaic defense operation from the ground. We've taken away their Air Force, their Navy, their intelligence services. We've taken almost everything away from them. They're still firing some missiles and drones at us and at their supposed neighbors and friends even. But it's got to come down to where, as you were saying, they want to defect, but it's also got to come down to, doesn't it, resistance by indigenous Iranians and Iranians from without that can get in there on the ground. And there are some resistance forces on the ground. We know that. We know Mossad has had some teams on the ground in and out throughout the last couple of years during their different operations and those kind of things. But what do we think is happening with the folks on the ground inside the country that can help take this apart and completely destroy it?
I was a company commander in Afghanistan in 2002, and we worked with the Northern Alliance to go after Taliban and Al-Qaeda remnants. And in Iraq, I worked with the Sunni insurgency to counter Al-Qaeda and Shia militias, and you have to build up that trust. But the biggest mistake we made in Iraq is we basically took all the qualified military personnel inside of Saddam's regime and said, you're no longer part of Iraq's future. And they went into the insurgency and made it lethal day one. We can't make that mistake again. As we look for indicators that the people are willing to rise up against the regime, as they see these, I mean, people are cheering the drone attacks on besieged checkpoints and IRGC static checkpoints. People are saying this is great because those are the people that will fire at us if we come out. So those things are happening. We have to look for indicators on the ground. but we have to have the Iranian people vet anyone who defects from the IRGC. They need to be the ones that say we can work with him. We're not very good at that. We have a lot of experience in counterinsurgency, made a lot of mistakes in counterinsurgency because we believe people when they tell us things that turn out to not to be true. Or the Iranian people won't be as gullible. Won't be. I'm not trying to say it that way, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
When you sit across from an Iraqi, they'll tell you what you want to hear. But an Iraqi will say he's lying to you. The Americans say no, he's telling me the truth. So that dynamic is at play. We need to trust the Iranian people to vet anyone who defects. But there's momentum here, right? How do you defeat this enemy? We've degraded it to the point where it's not as big a threat to its neighbors as it was 11 days ago.
Right.
We've taken out leadership to the point where anybody who tries to run for supreme leader or say that they should be supreme leader is unknown to the Iranian people because they've never seen this person before. It's likely Khamenei's son is in a coma, is injured, maybe even dead. The perfect candidate for the army. So you defeat them by demoralizing them, and you look for these things on the ground. Do we have an opportunity to provide weapons to a group, intel to a group, logistical support to a group? But whatever group that is, it has to have an Iranian face. It cannot be an American face. And the difference between, I understand hard right guys being against forever wars. I'm there too. I'm a veteran of forever wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Their baseline is sincere, but this is not that. This is the first time a population has asked us, come in, what's taking you so long? We have no problem with Israel killing these guys. It's your turn to come in, the US. So that's where we're at now. We have to see the time and space, offer the time and space for the people to do something. But if we don't see those indicators, then the president can say, I degraded their nuclear program, their ballistic missile program, their drones, their ability to fund terrorism, and we will hit them anytime they start to develop these capabilities again, and then call it success.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I'm concerned about. I'm watching too, and I've been in communication pretty consistently over the last 5 years with one of the groups that has people on the ground in there. But we're not seeing any indication that, as far as I know, that the population is actually going to rise up. I mean, it's one thing to be cheering and all that stuff, but at some point, we've created a lot of time and space inside this capability that the Iranian tyrants have for movement, and we're not seeing any movement that I'm aware of.
Well, the window just opened with this new drone campaign. This is a different phase of this operation to be able to take out static points, police hitting police stations. That sends a signal. If you and I were sitting in the neighborhood wanting to know if we could overthrow our government, and we saw a government security patrol decimated, I'd feel a little bit more secure now. And then you see how, as that expands, that window expands, and the people have an opportunity to do something. But again, if we don't see it, then we just declare that these things have happened. They were part of the president's strategy, and we need not force it to happen.
Yeah. If you were making recommendations in the daily briefings to the president, what would you be talking about now, 11 days into this, even by his admission, a 5-week planned operation? And we've only hit about 6,000 targets out of the known 20,000 so far. What would you be talking about with him from the perspective of getting this job done, either on the timeline or stay in the fight as long as it takes? And here's why.
Well, I would declare a no-fly zone over northern Iraq and northern Iran to protect our Kurdish allies, right? Anything, if we're gonna harm the Kurds in Iran, the Peshmerga in Iran, we need to protect the Peshmerga in Iraq because they're working together. There's logistical support, intel support, and we've abandoned the Kurds. When it comes to Syria, we didn't support the Kurds in the referendum in Iraq. So there's a hesitance, right, to believe what we're going to do. But if we demonstrate a capability to secure those areas, then we can bring in intel, arms, logistical support. And I'm not saying to the Kurds in northern Iran, but to have them push it to other groups that are willing to go after the regime. I would tell you that the next leader of Iran that is not going to be, that leads to regime change is going to be somebody we don't even know about right now.
Yeah.
Pahlavi, the Shah's son is talking about his popular support there. He has it. The MEK, the NCRI, they're great at gathering intel, but they don't have public support. The other groups, they all kind of fight with each other. There's no temporary alliance to exit the regime, and that's what we need to see form. A temporary alliance between the Azeris, the Kurds in the north, the people in Iran to go after the regime and find that charismatic male, because it's still a male-dominated society, to lead the opposition,
Yeah.
to step and then have these groups come together and have that referendum on who do you want to be the leader, that kind of thing. When we see that happening, that no-fly zone will probably kick that into gear to get at least people thinking that the U.S. is serious about this. But again, if we don't see that developing organically, because we've heard it before the strikes, before Epic Fury, hey, we're ready, we just need air support. The president said, stay in your homes till the bombing campaign's over. So that could be
Yeah.
part of it. This new drone campaign to take out, I'm telling you, if you and I were rebels and we start seeing government forces being destroyed by drones, I would feel a lot more confident. But the next signal is, and I don't know why we don't talk about this, we need to arm these people. We need to give them weapons.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's taboo in conversation. It's what we do. We're good at that. That's what we did with Ukraine. We're good at giving a dedicated force that speaks the language that is against one of our adversaries weapons. We need to find that same inside of Iran.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've been concerned about, and I've been talking about it for over a year now, is unifying like the Pahlavi forces, the MEK forces, and all of the other little factions that are inside the country. They have to be unified, or it's a no-go. I mean, it won't last, even if we try it. And I think that's why I think the president's probably looking at, well, at some point I'm going to have to either declare victory and go home, or they're going to have to start giving us indications that they're unified enough to where they can go forward and we can get them some arms and everything. Why the no-fly zone in the northern part of the country in northern Iraq? Is that because of the Iraqi? Is it called the PFM or PMF? Yeah.
It's because of emergency Quds Force backed militias, the same ones that we just hit yesterday in Al Qaim and Abu Kamal, the areas that cross into Jordan, because they were launching drones and rockets at our bases there. The same people that attack us all the time, the same people that Brett McGurk, Barack Obama, and Biden said were allies in the ISIS campaign. This is where my expertise lies in IRGC proxies and Quds Force operations. I was in Iraq for 4 years working these issues, and I know these groups very well. In some cases, we talked to them while they were in detention at Cropper and other places, Hookah, other places in Iraq. So yes, it's because of that. Anytime they were going to arm the Kurds in Iraq get punished by Iranian ballistic missiles and drones. We need to protect them, offer them the capability. They are the best fighting force in the country. They helped us with ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and the Shia militias, but they don't trust us because we've kind of left them out.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And politically, I'll just say this before we get to the end of the show. Politically, I think that I may even be in agreement with somebody named Lindsey Graham over this. Maybe we should be starting to talk about giving them their own autonomous zone across northern Iraq and northern Iran, or at least pieces of it, so that they can develop their own country, since they are such good friends to the United States, and not just that, but they're good friends to peace and prosperity.
And Israel.
I mean, that's in Israel. I mean, that's the pathway to peace across the Middle East is prosperity and freedom, so that people can live without being worried about their mom being kidnapped and put in a prison and then hanged for no good reason. Well, Michael, thank you very much for joining me today.
Real quick, there are two countries that are against all that we should have more leverage on: Turkey and Qatar. We need to not care what Erdogan thinks, and we need to tell Qatar that you are the next state sponsor of terror based on what you're doing.
You're absolutely right. Once again, thank you, Michael. I appreciate you joining me. This is going to be great. People will get a lot out of it and what they need to know about this Mosaic defense. And tomorrow, folks, Training Tuesday. I'll see you then.